Hey, hey, hey. Hello, good evening, good morning, wherever you are. This is ILBC.TV, and my name is Alicia. I'm your host tonight. We have another exciting episode of Feedback and Friends. And today we actually have a representative from all our collaborative arms at the moment. Feedback and Friends is a collective effort from us at ILBC as well as EDM Production, Reddit, and Discord. So we're all coming together to review your tracks every week, sometimes a couple times a week, and you never know who you're going to find in here. But we love all types of electronic music. Any type of music that is produced with electronic means is fair game. So we are here to review your tracks, to tell you what we think. It doesn't matter what genre it is. And super, super excited for anything that you might send in. So the way that it works, if you're just tuning in, we have a queue. I know some of you, by the way, shouts out are watching on Instagram or Twitter. It's not a great place to watch. I would assure you that Twitch is probably the best place to watch. You'll be getting, full resolution audio and everything else, but this is also the place where you can come chat with us on either Twitch or Discord. So we have a queue. If you join either a Twitch or Discord communities and type !help queue, letter Q, it will give you instructions on how to join the queue. And big ups to people in the chat commenting on my shirt. I just wanted to point out, I'm actually wearing a onesie. It is pajama jam Saturday night, style for me. I'm also wearing my sub pack. So hopefully today I have to mess around and hook it up. It's been giving me a little problems because it's almost on its last legs because they need to put out the new sub pack already. But I will be hopefully hearing all the bass. Shouts out to the chat. Apparently, Nathaniel, your glasses are very popular. So I just wanted to introduce, actually, I'll let you introduce yourselves and please let us know. Start with Nathaniel.
Hello, I'm Nathaniel Wyvern. I'm a EDM Discord community member. I will likely be here regularly to give feedback and discuss your music because it's a lot of fun. I'm a Master's of Architecture graduate based in Aberdeen, and I make a variety of electronic music because it's what we do.
Awesome. Go for it, Sammy.
Yeah. Hey, everybody. So my name is Sami. I'm from Finland, originally from Denmark. I'm the main moderator on the EDM production subreddit. And I run a small-time music label here in Finland. Used to do a lot of writing about music and ran a pretty popular website around that. And I'm super stoked to be here. Been making music myself for the past 15 years, so that's pretty close to half my life.
Amazing. Yeah, me too. It's been a couple of decades actually for me in the rave scene. And so really looking forward to checking out your tracks. So yeah, again, we have a queue to get in line. Just follow the instructions and you're going to just paste your link into a sheet. This just makes it easier for me to find. And so far we have about eight tracks in the queue. So if you get in now, we'll definitely have time. We're going to start with our user, a shoebox. And it looks like the artist name is actually Shuster. And the track is called Over Me. So let's check it out.
My head won't stop spinning, electric in the deep washes over me. Oh, yeah. Bright lights in the city, every sound that's got me moving to the beat. Oh, my head won't stop spinning, electric energy it washes over me. Oh, yeah. Bright lights in the city, every sound that's got me moving to the beat. Oh, my head won't stop spinning, electric energy it washes over me. Oh, yeah. Bright lights in the city, every sound that's got me moving to the beat. Oh, my head won't stop spinning, electric energy it washes over me. Now you know why I had to go. I still love
All right. So, what do we think of that? Comments from the chat. Sorry, I'm having a little trouble with my stop button. There we go. Sammy.
Yeah, so super clean production value. It sounds really great already. It's basically your run-of-the-mill UK garage. I really like the bass line, the melody, and everything. The snare roll at the beginning was coming in maybe a bit loud, in my opinion, so it could use a bit of like fading in. And the clap is maybe mixed a bit too loud, in my opinion. And a few ghost snares or ghost claps here and there could bring a bit more rhythm to the percussion section. But really clean and really solid.
Yeah. Natty?
I think for a standard sort of club banger track, the arrangement makes a lot of sense. I think that if there was going to be anything to change, it might have been worth experimenting more with the transitions because they're kind of just really, really rigid and straightforward. But given I think this is meant to be more set filler, I don't think that's necessarily a problem. That's just more of a how ambitious do you want to be with the project kind of question. And I wouldn't take that as a criticism at all. Maybe just something for Schuster to sort of play about with in the future. See how far they can go, bend that mold a little bit without breaking the DJ compatibility.
Yeah. I think for me, like the bass, like it was a cool bass sound, but as the track went on in the second half, I kind of wanted it to do a little bit more like of a turnaround or like a cool little accent here and there just to break it up because it is a repetitive pattern and like you have to find this balance, I think, with dance music where like you want it to be hypnotic, you want people to get into a vibe, but after a certain point, like I think around 2 minutes or so, I started to want to hear a little bit more of this, like what, my friend Lemondoza last week was calling ear candy, little tiny bits and things that just come in and little transitions and things like that. So, I think that basically for me, it's a good frame, but it needs a little bit more of detailing personally. So, that was a shoebox. We're going to move on to our user Mild, who submitted a track called Night Lights. Let's check it out. This is via Google Drive, which is never the best way. Likes to take its time. Oh my goodness. This is really thinking about it. Nathaniel, what are you working on right now?
Right now, I started, I guess it's like Electro House track, but it's focusing more on sort of big cinematic pads and chopping them up with gates and stuff. But it's all kinds of rough at this point because I've not entirely determined the final direction of the song.
Totally. Okay, here we go. Wow, wow, that was seriously like really, really, really sick. For me, I'm wearing this sub pack for anybody who's just tuning in, which is like your own personal bass speaker, and that passed the sub pack test. Sub pack actually goes down to 1 hertz, so you can really hear these things, and that gave me the perfect like punching in the chest, like really, really feeling it. Yeah, I really, really love the details on it. I really, really love like the jazz kind of vibe. Yeah, that's a great one for me. Nathaniel, what do you think?
It reminds me of city pop. There's a whole remixing of old Japanese pop songs, but with a modern, new funk, vaporwave kind of vibe. I mean, it's almost to the point where I really think that the verses might actually benefit from some sort of a vocal line that's sort of in the upper ranges, like, the sort of cute vocals kind of thing. Because it's got all the energy and progression, and if you had that, I think it would really catch on fire.
Mm-hmm. What do you think, Sammy?
Insanely well written song. Like, it's crazy how catchy that was. Like right from the beginning with the sexy like K-pop type of leads and the retroish FM slappy bass and everything. Just such a banger in my opinion. Like somebody said in the chat, the transition into like the C section or the bridge was maybe a bit sudden, but I really like the melody transpositions there because it brought some more interesting sections and like elevated the whole track, and then it dropped back into the solo section after that, and I just really liked it. Like Nathan said, it could maybe use some vocals to add some additional interest and add some few hooks here and there, but I don't think like it would need like a whole vocal track with like verses and singing and everything, just maybe some vocal stabs here and there, in my opinion.
Super, super good feedback. But yeah, Brandon Mild, shouts out. I really, really love like the soundscape on that one. I think the balance is really great. And I totally feel free to post your socials in the chat and I'll put it on blast. And that goes for anybody. If you're getting feedback, this is the time where it's okay to self-promote. I'm happy to throw up your link and let people follow you because this is what it's all about. Where ILBC, I wanted to go back and just tell people tuning in for the first time that this channel started around the International Live Beat Challenge, which is something we're developing around live electronic performance. So if you check us out at ilbc.tv, you can get more information on that. But we are here to build community, so don't be shy. Come in, chat with us, and submit your tracks. And yeah, we're here for you. So the next track is actually by someone we had on the feedback stream last Wednesday, Dub Killer official. So this sound is called Wet Sponges, I believe. bearing of, letting people have enough time to do stuff. This is like a 7.5 minute song, so I think we can start giving feedback over top of this while it's in the background. I mean, I think this is definitely like a club banger for sure, like a 4 a.m. kind of in the warehouse, like what day is it, what night is it, I've been in here like sweating, is this my sweat, is this his sweat, I don't know anymore, we're all one. That's the kind of vibe I'm getting.
Yeah, I really like the sense of dread and the drone in the beats. So just by turning the BPM down a few notches like the artist has done here, it's already a whole different vibe from like your run-of-the-mill 128 BPM house track. So I like the looping aspect of the track. I think it's on par with like what you would expect for this type of like techno tune. The bass line is maybe a bit too simplistic when it's going on for this long, so it could use some variation on it, but I really like it. It's definitely, like you said, it's like a 4 a.m. morning track when you are like feeling awful and something needs to get you back to the dance floor once again, and this might just be it.
Yeah, what do you think, Natty?
I think in order to ease some of that variation problem, like, well, I don't know if it's fair to call it a problem, but I mean, it could be really, really little things, like, just making micro alterations to the cutoff and the resonance on the bass sound, constantly the offbeat hat pattern, but it doesn't have to be with this sort of track. You could do something like a around the stereo field occasionally to sort of break up as a fill. It doesn't, like, it's not swinging, it's still within the same quantized sort of framework, but it would shake it up just a little bit, It's like lots and lots of teeny weeny little micro changes and just building within the same sound palette that you've already established there.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because now we're like 5 minutes 20 seconds in, and I like that little vocal thing. I think it's giving it some change.
There's now a little flute I can hear. That's kind of doing what I was suggesting doing with the hats as well.
Yeah. I mean, I would definitely vibe to this in a club, but I think if I were listening to this at home, it's tough because some music is made not for listening at home and playing at clubs, right? There definitely is different purpose music. If I were listening to this at home at this point, I would sort of want a little bit more ear candy, but I'm also a bass girl. I don't know if I'm qualified to comment on like techno type stuff or not.
How does it feel, like, on your sub pack? Because I don't have that frame of reference right now.
Oh, definitely that part is nice. Like the kick is hitting in a really nice place. Everything is sitting nice. I think for me, like I said, I just want something else to happen, especially at like 6 minutes in if I'm still gonna listen. But if you were playing this out, if you were DJing this and you're doing long mixes, I mean that might be perfect for you. So this is definitely not out of the ordinary for house and techno arrangements for sure. So
good job.
Yes, good job. All right, so that was Wet Sponges by Dub Killer. And our next up in the queue is Nespin West, user Ness. There's a song called Starlight Generator. super nice little dreamy synths in there. I really like that part of it. I think that's my favorite. For me, and maybe like one of you two can put your finger on it. Sometimes this is a hard thing for me. This is always what takes me the longest when I'm doing a mix, but it almost feels like there is a section of the frequency range that's missing. Like the last track that was, there was a couple tracks in here that have been really like well mixed and they've sort of hit me in the chest and they feel really full. And this one, I'm feeling the kick and the kick feels nice. And I'm hearing the top end synths and they sound nice, but it almost sounds like there's like less full low end, low mids, things like that. So yeah, I'm not sure what is missing. I'm not one of like those amazing people, but it feels like there is a bit of a hole and maybe some multi-band compression and maybe focusing on different elements. I don't know if either of you two have any tips for that or if any thoughts like that.
Yeah, I need to fiddle with my audio settings because on my end I'm not getting the full experience, but I think you are correct there. On my end, it is missing a bit in like the low mids, in my opinion. But in general, I really like the vibe of the track. It reminded me of like 2010-ish indie electro that went around like music blogs at that time. Artists like Die, for example, Tiger Sushi Records. This would totally be like up their alley. I think it needs a bit more polish on like the writing section. So, for example, the snare rolls at the end of each section felt a bit unpolished, maybe. So, generally, I like the writing. I just think that it needs the last polish on top of everything, and it would really like make the track like shine.
Yeah, I totally agreed. Yeah, I think sometimes people just get so like the kick and the bass is also like the toughest relationship. Like for me, I'll be done a mix and I'll go back and this will be the reason why I get to version 7B final FML.wave. It's just like the kick, the sub. And so it almost thinks for me, I feel like maybe some hardcore sidechain envelope would allow the bass to push up fast from under the kick. Cause right now I hear the kick and the kick is really full. And then the bass, like I hear the top end of the sound and it has a good timbre to it, but it's not pushing through in the same way it should when the kick is released. So maybe there's some side chaining that could be done, everything like that. So I would definitely mess around with that stuff. But yeah, for anyone just joining, thanks so much for all the follows. We are ILBC.tv, a channel dedicated to community education, entertainment, and most of all, just hanging with you and encouraging you in the fields of music production and live performance. So I'm going to move on to the next in the queue, which is our own Evelyn Seeker, track called Pestilence. So I'm already just in advance going to turn my volume down a little because I have a feeling this is going to slay. Oh my, what? Wow. Well, let's just say I just got a really, really good back massage from the sub pack. I think my pain is all gone. Thank you so much, Evelyn, based goddess. Wow. Nathaniel, why don't you go first on this one?
So I think the general arrangement is great, and obviously all the sound design is completely nuts, which is something I shouldn't be surprised about at this point, but Evelyn keeps on pushing the envelope further and further with every track, so that's always cool to hear. I think the thing that I miss most is that choir doesn't pop up again during the drops. That I feel like, given how generally sparse these sort of arrangements are, there's a room to use some of the choir tonality as a fill. So that then we don't forget about it, basically. Then it means that when it comes back, it's not this random stranger to us. Like, it starts in the intro, and then it keeps going, and then we get to the drop, and then it's like it's gone and never comes back. And then we get to the second section, and then okay, the choir's back again. But I mean, like, you could just use little snippets. I mean, you're already, I know for a fact you spend a lot of time post-processing and resampling things and playing about with all that kind of stuff. I don't think it'd be too hard to chop up some of your choir sounds and just use them every so often, just to give us that impression that it still exists and is there.
Yeah, totally. Sammy?
Well, as a genre, this is totally out of like my comfort zone, so I can't offer any technical input, but man, that hits hard. And like, right from the start, you know it's going to be epic with all the big cars and everything. And then you turn it up to 11, and it just goes totally nuts. And then you turn it up to 12. Like, I've never heard that before. Like, totally insane.
Turned up to 12. Yeah, and I agree. I mean, this is the kind of stuff that as I've gone through my rave career, like, I started feeling more and more like a grandma when I was around, because I get my favorite memory of the first time I realized that this kind of style was going to take over was I played at this like bass cannon festival, and it was like Excision and Downlink and like four of these like super hardcore dubstep guys, and they had it in a concrete warehouse with the stages like back to back. So you were just getting like from like three different stages at the same time. And myself and Dave Tipper were the only people there that were kind of like, I just remember I was sitting in the green room with Tipper, and he's just drinking an orange juice, like with a straw, like, what are we doing here? So that being said, yeah, I agree with you, Sammy. Like, it's not quite as out of my genre. It's very like, it's kind of the next one over. It's like this screaming little cousin, but this is like a great example of it. Like, I think it's aggressive, but it still has form. It's not just like, sometimes I listen to rhythm and these kinds of genres, and I'm just like, this is just somebody like sitting there stroking their own ego repeatedly with sound design, you know? And this doesn't give me that feeling. Like, this still has like a feeling, like a story to it, an emotion, and you know, it's very cinematic in a way. So I think you did a really good job keeping the aggression of the genre, but not being so all over the place and giving me this ego kind of energy. Like, it still feels really fun and really, really good. So amazing job, Evelyn. We love it. And the next one up is going to be from a longtime Discord regular of ours, Rusky. I love it. Rusky Slav. It's called Nintendo AC Nook Assignment Whip. Okay, so from Rusky Swab, that was not what I was expecting from you for sure. Definitely a different genre direction. I like the cute vibes of it. It's like almost like a video game level, like the in between where you're not actually fighting any sort of bosses. You're just going and you're like picking up little mushrooms and one ups and lives like that. That gave me that feeling, and I really like the guitar textures too. But I feel like there is, and obviously it's a whip, but now you need to go with movement. Like there needs to be some of these kind of not ghost notes, or maybe ghost notes too, but little bits of like noise or texture or something to keep the tension running a little bit, so that there's a little bit of kind of emptiness parts in there that just feel like you don't want to put too much more in audibly. Like I think you made the right choice keeping it clean, but just little tiny textures for me. Anyone else?
Yeah, I thought it was a very cute track, like somebody also mentioned in the chat. You have done really well with how you managed to break the mold in terms of you had these tiny off-rhythm melodies, for example, that didn't follow like a strict 16 pattern, and you also borrowed some notes outside of the scale, so it might either sound like you don't know music theory or you don't know scales, but when you do it with purpose and with proper intent, it can actually work, and I think you have succeeded there. I personally find it really hard to write like slow music that has so sparse elements while keeping it interesting, and that is also something you have done really well here. Maybe my only criticism would be that your guitar sounds almost too good, because all of your other sounds have like this homemade feel to it, like it is from a game console or something, and your guitar sounds very high quality compared to everything, but it's not a real criticism, it's just a stylistic choice. But if you want to like study something or somebody who does this type of music, I would recommend for you to listen to the Piku Niku soundtrack made by Callum Bowen. It has a very similar vibe and he pulls it off perfectly, so maybe you could try to borrow a few of his tricks, but great job in my opinion.
Oh, Nathaniel.
So I think on the whole, it nails the whole we're shopping for with Tom Nook kind of vibe. I mean, I've heard some of the Animal Crossing soundtrack, and it definitely fits within the same stylistic camp as that. So good job there as far as the whole this is an assignment thing. Nailed it. I think for me, the difficulties with this track and where you need to look is the last minute or so. Some of the sounds you introduce there that are new sounds aren't quite right yet. They're a little bit, I don't know, blunt. It's like they're not quite sitting in the same space as the others, to the point where it's actually adding a little bit more distance than you probably intend to add for something that's cutesy and chill. So I would take a look around that last section. Just make sure that everything you're adding there is actually contributing to the vibe and not just change for change's sake.
Check. There we go. Sorry. There we go. Can you hear me now? I think you can. So Rusky was asking if you guys do not feel the melodies connect and it feels too random, or if he's just worked too long on this. I do think it is a little bit random, but I think that for me, what was making it random was the fact that there needed to be a little bit of cohesion between the elements by way of those little noises and textures I was mentioning. So for example, like a really like cheap trick that I learned a long time ago was to kind of reverse a cymbal and put it like right beside the snare underneath really quietly so that you don't really hear it, but it kind of like sucks in and creates like a connection. So if you have a track with a lot of space, right, and you just have a kick and snare going dum, ch, right, in between you can have that reverse cymbal kind of, so it goes dum, right, and just kind of, it's just a little thing underneath that sort of brings things together when there's minimal space. So just little sounds and textures like that I think would pull things together. To me, melodically, there wasn't anything that was just like, oh my gosh, this is out of key or something. I don't know if anyone else thought that.
No, it has a sort of a loose, almost jazz vibe in that regard, where it could kind of do anything and get away with it.
Yeah, for sure. So yeah, good work. Definitely, hopefully check out those references. And we're going to move on to our next, which is Toy Mecca. It is Late for Train to Meowville. Aw, meow meow. Wow. Okay, that was a really abrupt ending. I would maybe just like yeah, I liked it. I know it goes with the track. I loved it actually. This track is so fun. It's so much fun. I loved like all the little effects. The only thing on and Invented actually said this a little bit about side chaining a few of the elements. I think maybe some really audible side chaining. I don't know if you're doing some and maybe it's just a little bit light, but because you have so much cool crazy stuff going on, I think being able to actually hear the side chain, which means, you know, a little bit of a longer release or attack, like just messing with it so that you have a tiny bits of silence in between would maybe make it even more clear and groove more. But just, yeah, it's beautiful. Sammy?
Super polished and really well written once again. I really dig the whole vibe. I wrote down a ton of different stuff here. So, for example, during the intro, I would have, I missed a bit of a variation in the intro chord steps. So it was like the same pattern the whole time. So a bit of variation would go a long way there. I really like the wet up that also came in during the intro, especially when the up-down melody thing, it was caught me by surprise, and I really like that. The breakdown was also like perfect. The bass hits hard, but I think during the choruses it's maybe following the kick a bit too tightly, so it doesn't like do anything else except it's hitting every time when the kick is also hitting, and that's maybe a bit boring, especially the second time around. Usually, I don't say this aloud, but every track could use more cowbell, but I actually found that this track had the perfect amount of cowbell, so well done on that. And during the second breakdown, or like after that, I think it gets a bit too dissonant when you're introducing a lot of new sounds, and it sounds like everything is going a bit out of key and a bit too wild. So I would maybe look at the tunings of the sounds to get a bit more cohesion into the section. But if you are meaning to keep it really wild and going totally crazy, then that's also fine. The modulation, where you are raising everything up a bit, came in a bit sudden, and I would maybe ease into it a bit.
Wow, that's the feedback of the year. I'm giving you the virtual cookie right now. Maybe I'll give you the real cookie too. Nathaniel, how are you going to follow that?
Well, me and Sammy were actually nerding out a bit about Shibuya K before stream started, and this is definitely the same energy. I also find it funny that we've had now two cute tracks in a row, completely unintentional, but that was a neat change up there between the two. I saw Invented on Discord. He said that he thinks the slap bass should be a little bit louder. I think it's not necessarily the body of the slap bass that needs to be louder, but the transient of it. It'd be something you'd saturate or use an exciter or some kind of thing just to get that top end a little bit more sharp, because it will cut through the mix clearer, and it really would then carry that old school, this is a slap bass and it's going to slap you in the face kind of thing. More so than it does at this point. It was a good vibe. I mean, it's a sort of a thing, you know, I feel like I could go walking and go and play pachinko or something, and it would actually fit in really well. The outro, I think that if you're going to end something like this, do it with style. Make it something like a big kind of thing. You know, you've built up all this energy, let it release in one move, and then you can just have it tail out. I think that would solve the outro problem quite swiftly.
Yeah, totally. Wow, I'm really impressed. I was just so like in love that I was bouncing around. So I'm really glad that I have the two of you here. That's so super great feedback from both of you. We're ILBC.tv for anyone tuning in, especially if you're tuning in on Instagram. It looks like crap because it puts me into portrait mode. And so you can just see, I think, half of each of our faces. This is not the ideal place to watch. You want to be watching us on Twitch at ILBC_TV. And please subscribe and stay tuned, because this is going to snowball into a competition with lots of cool prizes. We have some of our favorite tech companies on board, such as Ableton, Native Instruments, Focusrite, Loopmasters, Audius, Erica Synths. It just keeps going on. We're just trying to build a community with all of you, show you stuff, cheer you on, and have a little bit of fun. So next up is Effect Rabbit. This is a song called Flower Bud. And actually, I think the artist name is IIYO. Please let us know. Sorry about that if I'm butchering your name, but we are going to check out your track right now. This is so beautiful. And we had this on the stream before, and then they've gone and done some work. So this is feedback round 2 on this song. Really, really nice. Wow. So yeah, I mean, great job. I loved it before, love it now. For me, I think in the breakdown, I wanted to hear a little bit more, some kind of texture. It could have been like a street noise. I hear some kind of vinyl noise towards the end, and I think that would have been cool. Like when I was listening to the breakdown part, like right 247 or so, that was when I was wanting like just a little top kind of sizzling air sort of layer just to add over top. The motifs are so beautiful. The blip, like the second part in the B section, the B section is fantastic. I think that little blip thing that kind of goes like the snare is a little bit loud. Just a tiny bit. And then my only other little nitpick, and this is a nitpick because I think that the song and the vibe is really awesome and kind of takes you to another place. But I think near the end, some of the snares that should be louder and should be accented are a little bit quiet compared to the kick and the rest of them. So there was I think that I remember last time we gave feedback in this talking about blending some of the drums together better. I still think like with the kick and the snare, they have to be really solid and even. They're sort of the anchor of the track, right? And they allow you to do all this beautiful trippy, glitchy stuff. So just make sure that they're even. So that's my 2 cents. Nathaniel.
I think I definitely agree with the feedback, especially the snares. I mean, they're definitely not quite right, and especially towards the end, where it's meant to be like really wild, but the snares aren't quite conveying that in the amount of punch they have. But I mean, this is I honestly can't remember precisely how it sounded before, but it sounds super solid now. So I mean, I feel like obviously some progress has been made because I can't really pick out too many things that seem off. Like it's just a solid vibe.
Yeah. What do you think, Sammy?
Yeah, really beautiful track. Enjoyed it from the start to the beginning. During the intro, I really loved the tiny like reverse sound effect there, blended in with the piano, and I think it's really hard to like make a nice ambient texture and pattern everything, and it's just sparkly, shiny, interesting, beautiful. Before you come into the like neuro hop style of sections with the neuro bass and everything, you have this more acoustic, realistic type of drum. I think it could need a bit more polish with the velocities and playing with the panning, because it sounds like everything is kind of like unmixed still there. So the acoustic type of drum, everything is kind of panned like in the same way, and everything is playing with rather even velocities, which makes it sound a bit robotic. And compared to like these electronic drum sections, I think you could try to humanize the drum sounds a bit more during those sections. But especially during the second time when the neuro section came in, and I was just totally taken in by the track. Like the transition was really awesome, and you transformed the whole track and the whole mood during that instance, and really great vibe.
Yeah, amazing. Shouts out, Effect Rabbit. Really liking it. Next up is our own Invented, giver of great feedback. So I think we better give him some. This is a track called Self-Esteem. Fire, absolute fire. Again, yes, you're testing my sub pack. Everybody giving me a very nice back massage. Thank you so much. Yeah, I love the energy. It's super dramatic, and that bass feels really nice. Evelyn is saying the low end, lower mids are rather inconsistent. I do think, yes, there was a moment that around 210 or 209 or something, where the track sort of did a little turnaround and it cut out, and there was one like low mid synth down, and that was a little quiet. I wanted that to kind of punch out at me more. So I think that, yeah, working a little bit more on that like low, like balancing out all of it, and then maybe even like you have such really strong central bass pulsing sounds, like the sidechain feels absolutely great, but now I want to hear almost some weird little panning and stereo little touches maybe on top, like maybe just subtle things, maybe just as you've got that really great boom, boom, boom coming in, maybe you can just have a tiny little glitchy noise here and there that kind of goes like across the stereo field, or just little things that happen that just kind of catch you off guard because you've got a really great main groove, and now I want to hear a couple of weird things happening. So that's my 2 cents. Nathaniel.
So, DV1651 Street? Don't know how far. Anyway, they said, D&B, question mark. Please be a D&B question track. Close enough. I mean, I find that very interesting because the intro doesn't really hint at all about what sort of track it is, beyond being a really sort of atmospheric, serious electronic tune. It might even be worth exploring that, because that's a lot of potential for either getting someone else to remix your track or making a variant of it that you can switch out and back and forth if you ever go DJing or any of that sort of thing. It's got a huge amount of potential, I think, to be a really malleable concept. I like how you continued the pseudo vocal synths all the way through, so that the two parts do connect, but they're still distinct from each other. I think that works really well. I didn't get the full impact because of my sound quality from this end of the qualities of the bass, but I think that the arrangement works. I mean, how far along are you in this? Because it's just sort of ends right now, so I assume it's still fairly work in progress. But I mean, it may even be worth then looking at how you can create that second drop, continuing to make the most of that variability that we established, that this track really could go anywhere.
Yeah, he says he's about 60%. So working on the second half. Yeah, no, I mean, I really loved, like, especially in the breakdown, those little kind of D&B breaks. I think that sort of breaky rolling feeling that you had was sort of what, I actually, when DV said D&B, I was kind of like, it could be going there. But you're right, Nathaniel. It was very like agnostic, genre agnostic, which I think is super great. I mean, it's fun to keep people guessing, and especially to lead them in a direction and then just like make them flinch. So I think that is a good quality, and you should capitalize on that. And then maybe who knows? Maybe in the second part you could go into sort of a halftime or a D&B ish, like like that Spectre Soul kind of like it's still like something like that. That could be a way. It could go anywhere.
Yeah, I also actually made a note on that. Sorry, I need to mute myself again. So I also made a note that it is rather ambiguous in the beginning, but when the snares came in during the first build-up, I already kind of had an idea just based on the snare sound that this is going to be like one of these hard-hitting dubstep type of tracks. During the intro, you have this rain texture. I think you need to blend it in a bit more. It sounded a bit stock soundish, hitting quite hard. So I would personally maybe EQ a bit of the highs out, add a tiny bit of reverb, and then add some stereo width to it, and maybe make it a bit quieter as well. I really like when the bass hits after the intro, and especially the pause just during the drop. It really put a proper emphasis on the drop after that. But for the actual drop, I think the bass sound had a bit too much of the highs. I found it a bit shrill on my headphones at least. So I would maybe look at the EQ and maybe turn down a bit around like 1.2 kilohertz. I really love the short amen break sections during the second build-up. You had some faster hats coming in after those. I would maybe add some variation to the rhythm just to create like a few pauses to add some emphasis on the other sounds you have also going on there, and not keeping the hat line going on basically all the time. You had like one or two breaks in there, but you could maybe use them a bit more as well.
Cool, cool. All right, sweet. Yeah, great track. I really hopefully you should resubmit it when you're more finished. I would love to hear where that second drop goes. Our next track is from Set Solid Music, and I'm getting really excited already because the link is like /Future Garage /something, and I'm like, wait, Future Garage? I'm so ready for this. That's the whip title. So Set Solid. Here we go. Oh, that was an abrupt whip end, but yeah, I really love Future Garage. I'm very like partial to this genre, so I'm just gonna jump in and say, yeah, I think that your vibe is super right, and there's some really nice stuff panning and going on. I like the melody and the atmosphere. Evelyn has commented a few times that the rim shot is a little bit distorted. I think I didn't notice that as much as for me, the kick was really taking over in a certain way. I think there may just be a little bit of cleanup needed to be done. And sometimes you just need to go in with a notch EQ and you really just need to find like there will be certain parts of that kick that are a little bit too boomy and it kind of gives you like what I would call like the toilet paper tube sound. And it's tricky because you're making Future Garage and you've got like that burial influence, which is like kind of lo-fi. So I'm not saying you have to make it super clean, but it's a little bit just like it's kind of like, it's just a little bit too flat. And I think that space that it's taking up is taking up valuable space that you want for your atmospherics and you want for the vibe. So maybe just a little bit of notch EQing on the kick and maybe even turning it down just like the tiniest bit for me, because it was really quite present and maybe more present. Like I would expect in a hybrid trap track for the kick to be super, super loud. But I think with Future Garage, it should sort of sit just a little bit more subtly and maybe a little bit rolling. And the other thought I had was that maybe you could clean up the tail of the kick, because I noticed, and this is something I do all the time, if the tail of your kick is even just a little bit too long, it's going to take up that space every time it hits. It's probably going to hit a lot because it's your kick, so it's going to happen pretty often. So sometimes even just tweaking the fade of your kick a tiny bit can also give you a little more space. So those are my thoughts. Sammy?
Yeah, I love the feeling of space in the track. So really nice use of the reverb as a whole, and the vocals you used supported that very well. Also, it didn't stand out too much, but it was present when it needed to be. I did actually like the kick, because usually I find that Future Garage artists, especially if they are not super experienced, they keep it too clean, in my opinion, and clinical. So the kick had a nice and boxy feel to it, but I think the main percussion, I think, is the rim shot sound you're using. It is lacking in emphasis, in my opinion. It's a bit like a cowbell hitting instead of like a clap or a snare. So I would maybe consider layering it with a snare or a clap, or maybe even swapping it out. But most people in the chat actually liked it, so it might just be me. But I really like the vibe and super interested in hearing where you're going to take it next.
Nice. Me too. So next up, by the way, Set Solid, thank you for joining us. It's your first time on stream, loving it. So next one is Cookie. So he's actually got an Audius link, and I just want to shout out to Audius. They've been a super great organization to work with just as an artist and as a community member. They're always supporting us. They have done remix competitions with us. They're going to be supporting ILBC, and they have really high quality streaming audio. So anything that I play back on Audius, I already know is going to sound a lot cleaner and more hi-fi because SoundCloud does this compression at 128 sort of thing. So without ado, we have a track called Lost by Cookie. Sorry, I'm the worst. Yes, Cookie. All right, so this is the finale, which is I'm really liking. Actually, maybe I'll give it a second. Super pretty. So the first thing that I thought of when I heard this was so that classic song by Robert Miles, "Children." If you haven't ever heard that, it definitely reminded me of that like super fairy tale kind of trancy. And like the thing is sometimes people there's a thing that oh, Alicia doesn't like trance. It's not that I don't like it. I'm not the type of person to just hate on entire genres, except maybe Big Room. But the thing the thing about a lot of trance is that I find that it's just very insipid, and like sometimes they just sort of cheap out on and just use a basic arpeggiator. And this did not have that. I really liked the emotion in this and the feeling, and it really took me to a super nice space. For me, the only thing I wanted to hear overall was more evolution, right? Like more little tiny things happening. Like I wanted to have automation. Like maybe if you have a reverb on something, the reverb can sort of increase towards the end of a bar, and then maybe things can drop out and you can create some space and contrast for a second with those effects. And it's almost like letting your track breathe and go in and out. So you can have those beautiful chords and maybe have like a slow filter that's building up on them. And these are what I call sort of micro tensions, because they're not like big buildups and breakdowns. They're not so obvious, but they keep the track going. So the other thing that I would spotlight is, and other people said this, is the bass sound that comes in around 3 minutes 33. I think that could be worked on a little bit. It's a little bit honky. It's a little bit resonant. So I think going in with some notch filters, maybe even having some automation, having over that, and just giving it variety and giving it cleanliness. Sammy?
Yeah, as a whole, I think the writing and sound production both are quite good, but it needs some work on the mixing, but it needs even more work, in my opinion, to kind of like find this main idea. So I feel like the track is a bit everywhere, so it doesn't have like this central idea that is evolving around. To give some more detailed feedback, the white noise during the intro was maybe a bit too loud, during my opinion, and the subs get lost on my headphones. So I think you are missing some frequencies when we are going above like 40 hertz, and I would maybe EQ a bit of those more in. I really like the delay on the RP synth, especially that played during the first few minutes. But I didn't actually have any proper bass on my headphones during the majority of the track until this electro highs type of bass came in. So you had a lot of subs, but you didn't have like any mid subs for the bass to kind of keep the low end going. I could really see somebody remixing this into some like faster, more energetic type of trance, and with the writing and melodies, I think it would work really well. So I think you've done a really good job on the writing. I would focus more on getting like individual sections to stay more consistent and be less uneven in terms of mixing. And then like how you are currently transitioning from one section to another, I think that's working really well.
I have some thoughts as well.
Please do. Go for it.
And darn you, Isha, now I've got children in my head. Dum, da da dum.
Yeah.
Da da dum. Da da dum. Anyway, like that's actually a really good reference, because the piano in Children is solid AF. I think that it's the piano here that needs to be beefed up a lot. It's a very Nexus sounding piano where it's just sort of really short and stabby. It doesn't really get a lot of movement in itself, but that's a really easy thing to fix. I don't remember what DAW you use, Kiki, but if you automate the sustain signal on your MIDI for your piano, you can actually start to play about with it like someone at a real piano would have the ability to. Because with a real piano, it's a foot pedal. So you can sort of ease up in and out on it really, really easily, almost subconsciously as you're playing. But obviously, if you're entering in a MIDI, you don't have that input, and so you got to go back in afterwards and do it manually. As if you can get that sort of sense of movement and sustaining notes occasionally, like not all the time, because again you'd bat the same problem of it all sounding the same, but you just create that natural tension and variation in it, and I think it would work quite nicely. Also, a thing I do with pianos sometimes when I want to really make them sort of stand out, I end up stacking 2 or 3 layers together and then running them into a bus as sort of a triad parallel processing chain, because then I can emphasize different aspects of the piano's timbral qualities. It might be worth experimenting with just to sort of help it cut out across the rest of the track.
Very good feedback, everybody. Next up, I'm actually excited. We have Shwilly, who was just great on the stream on Wednesday, giving us another whip track with Kamati. So really stoked to check that out. It's called Get Out My Face.
Get out of my motherfucking face, man. Get out of my motherfucking face. Get out of my motherfucking face. Get out of my motherfucking face, man. Get out of my motherfucking face, man. Get up out my motherfucking face, man. Get the fuck up out my way, man. You too lame and sad, you busy hating. Let me take you out the space, you need a pay. Get out of my motherfucking face, man. Get out of my motherfucking Get out of my motherfucking face. Get out of my motherfucking face.
Pace yourself, life's too short, you too cool. Gotta take a moment and live them full. Yeah, we riding around with the crew, bumping tunes. My homie made last week while he skipping school. Following the dream, fuck the system, fuck the rules. Yeah, we coolin'. Cooler than a polar bear's toenails. You see how we do it, yeah, oh hell. Outcast, see the influence, break it down. Like a blowing white owl from my hometown. Down south, Alabama, yeah, I wish him well. Where I made my first wish, I wish him well. Childhood was a dream, yeah, can't you tell? We were free flowing, knowing how to keep it real. That's all we need, no stress, I'm free. Get out of my motherfucking face with the petty things. Work on yourself and then you'll see we're meant to do this as a team. All that matters is my family.
Get out of my motherfucking Get out of my motherfucking
That's all we need, no stress, I'm free. Get out of my motherfucking face with the petty things. Work on yourself and then you'll see we're meant to do this as a team. All that matters is my family. That's all we need, no stress, I'm free. Get out of my motherfucking face with the petty things. Work on yourself and then you'll see we're meant to do this as a team. All that matters is my family.
All right, another straight banger from Shwilly times Kamati. really, really cool bass sound design. Oh my God. That was like not just a back massage, but a back scratch. So what I mean is you just had some really nice, like high end distortion. I really, really loving those kind of like metallic bass accent. But I'm agreeing, as you can see, the chat is blowing up about this, that the vocal production needs a bunch of things, I think, because it definitely takes the track, as somebody said from Invented said, from professional banger to a little bit more bedroom producer sounding. The thing is yeah, it could be the recording. I'm not sure how the recording would sound, but it sort of sounds like you're EQing it to be a little bit telephony, a little bit kind of far away, which is fine. But the thing about that is you have to sort of mix that with a more clear signal, especially to go with the kind of music this is, and Invented. I love your feedback, Andy. Says, yeah, it sounds like an iPhone voice memo in the middle of a well-mixed track. Exactly. So I think that it would be good for like a little effect phrase, as if it was, the iPhone memo interlude. Hey, babe, it's me. I've been up all night thinking about you, that kind of stuff. But I think that for rapping, you need to have a layer. And this is a trick that I teach my students as well, is you have to get, if you want that telephony thing, if you want that far away, distorted, if you want any kind of extreme sound, just mixing in a dry, well-compressed layer that has, like, think Billie Eilish as well. Like when I get, ASMR, and by the way, I'm still new to Twitch streaming, and I just encountered the phenomenon that is girls licking microphones for 19 hours doing ASMR, and I was like, maybe my next stream I should just...
Please don't.
But anyways, what I'm trying to tell you is, I think that, no matter how good your mic is, and no matter how, like, what you're recording into, if you can get really close to it, and if you can rap into it, and you can get clarity, right? And then you can mix that in, and you can even like really cut the lows off, like if you don't want to get too much interfering with that sound, but keeping like the consonants, the sibilants, and the up closeness, and mixing that in, and having that compressed layer will give it more of that professional clarity. And then you're still going to hear that stuff, like it's about balance. And another trick that I will say is, like, you can use reverb on it, but roll the low end off your reverb. This is the biggest mistake people will make. They'll say, oh, it's too dry, I need some reverb, and they throw some reverb, and they don't manage the low end of that, and they end up amplifying whatever like low end resonance also didn't need to be there in their vocals. So, as you're saying in the chat, Shwili, you're saying I need to get a new mic, I need to make a little corner in my studio, and my issue is my technique. So for sure, I mean, this is important. And as you can see, if you look behind me, I have like a very unideal situation right now, because I'm sort of in between living in Colorado and living in Spain. So right now, my nice ISO booth, my speakers, and all the things that make recording good, like having this dead space, this is not there. I have a big glass window behind me. It's the start of Falles in Valencia, which is basically like a sanctioned apocalypse where people just blow things up. So it's really, really hard to record in here. And the only way that I can get something really decent is by getting super close to the mic, because if you get you should definitely get a better mic. I don't know what you have, but even just getting a lower end condenser mic or something, and then just being close to it, right? Because the closer you are, a lot of these mics are cardioid patterns, so they are meant to pick up you being close to the mic. And so you can kind of cheat and get around not having the best environment if you're able to control your own voice. Because the problem with getting close to the mic is that people have plosives, so they go poo poo poo, and they also can overload the mic. But if you're rapping and you're not singing, this is less of a problem, because you're going to have more of an even volume to your voice. So this takes a little bit of technique, but it's just about get a little bit close and keep a straight distance. Yes, Evelyn's saying consider a dynamic microphone if you don't want to tame your room's resonance, things like that. Yeah, I am a vocal producer first. That was one of the first things I learned about production before I even really got into making electronic beats. So this is definitely my bread and butter. A lot of people here are recommending a dynamic mic. So yes, I do agree. Like a condenser mic is better, but you are going to pick up more of the room. So it kind of depends on how much you're able to do with your room. If you can deaden your room, get a condenser, and look at the one that Sammy is holding up right now. This is that the SM7B? Is that the
yes. No, AKG P120.
Well, there's a certain dynamic mics that a lot of people use for streaming, and for the same reason, because they want to just sit in a room and they don't want to have to worry about padding the entire room or where they are in the room, and they want to keep this. Oh, I see. No, I was asking HTT Pistol what mic he was using, this SM7B. So that's the one that is pretty standard, and even in my school that I was teaching at, they would always recommend that to the students as well. So yeah, I mean, I wish we were in the same. You're not in the same city together, Kamadi and Shwili. This is a remote collab. This is pretty cool. So yeah, Shwili, we would recommend the SM7B for your situation, and then it will pick up less of your room, and it will be more clear. And then again, there's also technique. So another thing that you can get if you do have if you do get a condenser mic and you do fix your room is a pop filter, right? You want something to keep their from going into the mic when you record. But if you do self-control, you can compress less, you can run your mic hotter, and these are all things that are actually just really good for rapping, because if you've ever listened to an old school radio announcer, like they get that big boomy like you're listening to, and what they're actually doing is taking advantage of this proximity effect that a lot of mics have, where it makes your voice bassier and boomier. So if you get a mic like that, like the SM7B, and you get a little closer to it, like actually every time Sammy talks, it's rattling my sub pack a little bit. So it's got that same radio announcer thing, and I think for rapping, absolutely, that would be a good idea. All right, I've been rambling. Nathaniel, would you like to say something?
I think that as far as vocal processing, obviously, yeah, all that technique. The hardest part with layering, especially in that manner, is you've really got to make sure you nail the verse in a very, very close manner to how you did it the first time. So don't be worried if it takes a few attempts, because that is totally normal and you may even have to resort to comping as a result, where you have to do small, minute sections of your rap over and over again just to get it to right where you need it to be, so it stacks on top of the first version better.
Yeah,
It's
Sammy?
a painstaking process.
Sauce, and there are especially like my weak points. I totally melt when I hear like a really nice sauce synth. The crash sound you are using sounds a bit cheap compared to everything else, in my opinion, because everything else sounded quite professional, like people have commented, but the crash was maybe a bit off, in my opinion. Your synth melodies and vocals are a bit too much drowned behind the main bass, because the main bass is hitting so hard. So I would maybe consider bringing those up a bit. So adding maybe a bit of top end, adding some stereo width to them while you're keeping the bass in the middle. You can add a bit more of those into it if that's what you desire. I really love the main bass sound. But I think you could maybe do with some variation between the shorter melodic notes, the dun 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 dun, versus the longer boom notes you have. So it gets a bit boring maybe when you are using the same bass for those both sections. But I really liked the raps. I think it was really like well rapped, and I think it suited the track really well. The mixing or the recording was just off, like other people have commented here, so maybe fix that. But and then I had this question on the bass sound. It leaves like this tail with this distortion artifact. So I was wondering if it was intentional or if it was like a byproduct of heavy compression, and if it's something you are meaning to leave there, or if it's something you maybe want to consider cleaning up.
Yeah, interesting. I love how different people's ears pick up on different things, It's just so cool. And this is why this is so much more fun for me than just doing a feedback stream by myself, because every time I hear what somebody else heard, I learned so much just from that as well. So thank you, everyone. We are ILBC TV Feedback and Friends. For anyone just tuning in, we represent ILBC, we represent the EDM production Reddit and the electronic music production and performance Discord. We're kind of just a mega community of love. So next up we have, I believe, I'm going to guess it's Mo Fire. That sounds like it would make sense. With the spelling, I never know. And the note that they put in the sheet is whip, no processing, just arrangement, automation, and a bit of an EQ. So with that in mind, we are going to listen to this track called Donna. I don't know why Google Drive, all these links, they take like 100 years to load. So I'm just going to spitball while this is loading instead of, watching the spinning beach ball. And so Rusky is just asking about the feedback clarity about movement and any sources you can dig into. So basically just little tiny sounds that glue your sounds together and move the tracks so they don't just sound like a bunch of separate layers. So I almost like to call those layers between layers. They're those little things that, if you've ever heard the term ghost notes, about notes that you don't really hear, but you sort of keep the rhythm going with them. These are almost just like ghost layers where you don't notice, hey, there's a layer going on with a bunch of sounds. Those sounds are just gluing the main sounds together, such as like sweeping cymbals or little noise textures, anything like that. Okay, so I'm seeing that it's Moxfire. Yeah, I invented the name before I knew French was a language. I love it. All right, this track is called Donna. If it plays. Oh, hold on a second. It's not going to play because it's telling me there's a problem and I have to download it. So, all right. Let me see. Where did I download it to? Nathaniel, do you have any tips for Rescue on movement while I finesse this downloaded song?
I think it's things, for me, a lot of the time I abuse delay. Little subtle delays and choruses and flangers and, just really teeny weeny little things you can turn on and off with automation. So you can create a sense of rhythm, especially. This is why I like delays, because you can set it to only come in at a certain time, and if you mix it in a certain way, it means it only stacks in a subtle manner rather than a really strong one, unless you're going crazy. So it might be worth having some of your sounds echo on themselves. The other thing would be just, if you're going to make it sound like a shop, if you're really going in on that shop vibe, it might be worth looking at Foley more than worrying about your sounds as they are, to give it a sense of environment rather than worrying about whether you're going to add many more musical components. There's a really good thing. They're called Sonus. They do game audio samples. And every year they give away a massive load of samples that are royalty free, and you can do whatever. And they've got 2015 to 2020 absolute gigabytes upon gigabytes of sounds. You may find something in there that you could use to emphasize the I am shopping kind of vibe. I don't know. I mean, there's a few different ways you could go about it, but that's something that might be worth exploring.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, I'm having to solve CAPTCHAs. So, do you have any tips, Sammy, on sort of movement and gluing layers together?
Yeah. Sorry, I gotta mute myself again here. So I would maybe consider adding texture, like you said. So kind of like this central noise sound motif, whatever that is, kind of keeping everything going in the background while you are kind of riffing and jamming on top of it. So if you're leaving too long breaks, people aren't really not kind of knowing where you're going with it. For the video game type of sound you had in the track, I don't know if you could personally fit in delay and flangers. I know I couldn't, and Nathan maybe could, but I think I would personally just try to add in some tiny noises, some tiny bips and bops here and there, just to add some interest. And like Elisha said, you could try using them as like kind of ghost notes, so it doesn't even need to be audible. It just needs to be able to lead into whatever you have coming up next.
Good tips. All right, I had to do some finessing with this, but we've got it up. So we are now going to listen to Moxfire, Donna.
ask too much. I know you. Time was never so short until you ask for more. I know you. Quietly as we walk along, or something to do. And I never want to go home, leaving the day alone. So I go to quietly as we walk along.
Okay, well, definitely lots to comment on this one. And again, Moxfire left us a note that there was not really a lot of processing going on yet. So definitely, I think we can guide this one a lot. So first off, I mean, you definitely need some more compression off of different elements, different individual, at least groups of things, like the drums, that snare when it was kind of going into the bill, like dun, dun, dun. It got a little bit monotonous for me, and I think that maybe like doing a long filter as it or something like that, or something to give it a little bit of variety would be good. That was one first thing. The second thing are some of your like chords, the main ones, the shots, the kind of Rhodesy, Wurlitzy ones. Are those panned a little bit to one side? Because it threw me off a little bit. I think that they are kind of a main element, and so if you wanted to put them in a different space, you could try very gently stereo spreading them, or you could try doing mid-side EQ. So I don't know if you've ever explored mid-side EQ, but this is going to segue into my next comment, which is that the trickiest thing can sometimes be when you have big chords and you have vocals, they get in the way of each other. They really do. And so a lot of people don't really know how to fix this. And I actually have a tutorial, which is getting pretty old now. It's on my YouTube, and it's done when I used to work in Logic, actually, which is a while ago. But it was about 6 different ways that you can fix vocals in the mix. That's what it's called, if anyone wants to look it up. And one of them really gets into mid-side EQ, side chaining EQ, and dynamic EQ. And these are all just different ways of using EQ. And I think that this knowledge is a little bit underexpressed, especially in electronic music, because people go off about compression so much. They go off about OTT and multiband compression. But what you can actually do, for instance, is you can sidechain your vocals to your pads only on a specific EQ frequency. So you could say, I like my chords the way they are. I'm going to leave them just fine. But every time the vocal hits, it's going to cut the chords around 1K or something like that. And that's a way where you can keep your chords, and then just when the vocal hits, it will dip down that frequency range that is interfering with that. So that is one thing. And then mid-side EQ is EQing the stereo field. So another thing you can do is EQ the center channel of your chords so that your vocal has a place to sit. So those are kind of advanced things that we could get into tutorials of, but I would say, look into mid-side EQ, look into side chaining your EQ, everything like that. So those are my comments. Sammy, you're typing furiously. I guess you got something to say.
Yeah, I was just replying on the chat, but this is a really hard track because I think it's breaking the mold in quite a few ways. It isn't strictly any type of genre of music, so it's really hard to give feedback because I don't think you need to stick to being like a certain type of house or techno or whatever. I think it's good that you are sort of going between the lines and doing your own thing. But at the same time, if you want to make it sound like more professional, or if that's not intention, what you are like trying to do with the track, then maybe it's more helpful to try to drive you into some sort of direction. So I'm kind of torn with this track now. Personally, I like the vocal stabs, how you are using them, but the way you are transitioning in from the longer singing sections into you are cutting the samples and using that as the melody, I think that is a bit sudden. And the way you have the bass sitting underneath the vocal chops, it feels a bit off for me, not like mix wise, but maybe stylistically. So I wouldn't say that this Reese type of bass kind of fits the mood, at least the way I'm experiencing it during those sections. And in general, I think the sample selections you have used for the drums are also a bit cheap. So I would consider looking at different sounding samples and processing them a bit differently, because it sounds a bit amateurish as it currently stands. But I really like how the track is very different, and it's nothing like you can find on Spotify or SoundCloud, because it's something you have made and it's something very personal, in my opinion.
True. Yeah, very good. It is. I really did like the groove that it got into. I think that if you really did a lot of like obvious side chaining, it would even help with that slappy, like groovy feel, and it would create more room. So side chaining both in compression and with EQ. Natty, you got anything?
So, I find it really hard on the whole when it comes to songs like this to vibe with vocal chops when they're played really straight. I think the problem here, obviously, I saw in the chat that these aren't the actual stems, they're extracted, so obviously that leaves a little bit of an issue until that's resolved with the quality of the sound of the vocals themselves and how you can resample them to make a chop. You have a couple options, I think, in order to improve the situation. One would be to literally drop those chops into something like Vital or Serum or whatever and add variability through synthesis, through resampling it into a new processing chain and alternating. I think that would combine with changing how your bass, like when your bass hits in those sections, so it's a call and response between the vocal chops and the bass, might even resolve the problem that Sammy has. I mean, you said that the Reese sound you don't think fit the mood, but I think it's more the timing of the Reese above everything else that's sort of taking away from the effect. You could still potentially get away with the sound that's present. It's just because it's basically hitting it exactly at the same time every time. The other option, I think, because I don't know how much collaboration between you and your friend who you're doing this effectively a remix for, would be to get her to copy your vocal chops, to make those sounds herself, to layer back in over the top of your chops, as a sort of a parallel summed comping kind of situation. But I don't know how close your relationship and how much work she would be willing to do to make that happen. But I mean, it wouldn't if she's. I mean, she sounds really good. So I mean, I don't think it would be beyond her ability to mimic that sort of semi-artificial sound, was because it's mostly just vowels, effectively, at the end of the day, that you've ended up with.
That's a really, really good idea. I mean, I love that. It's super, super cool. Oh my gosh. So we're down to like the last 3 tracks of the night. It's amazing. I hope you all are having a great Saturday night. And I really appreciate you all tuning in to ILBC.tv, where we're giving feedback. Feedback of friends is going to be a regular thing that we do with a rotating cast of characters from our wonderful EDM production subreddit, from our Discord, and from the general community that we're trying to build here. So I am going to check out Tapestry of Blazing Starbirth by General Strike. I already love this title. It's a Dropbox link, which looks like it's behaving. And here we go.
The window was nailed and boarded, through which I saw the wind. And my love is at the fern of Halley, a birch tree, and she has always been. Between timber and milk hollow here and there, about daily churn. She is birch, a hazel, a straight, slender woman, rowan woman. Escripado of my people, where Norman and Big Hector were. Their daughters and their sons are a wood, going up beside the street. Oh, proud tonight. Proud tonight, pine cocks crowing on the top of Knock and Ra. Straight their backs in the moonlight, they are not the wood I love. I will wait for the birchwood until it comes up by the cairn, until the whole ridge from Bain and Lace will be underneath its shade. If it does not, I will go down to Halley to the Sabbath of the dead, where the people are reprinting every single generation gone.
Whoa. Am I streaming right now? Is this real? Am I awake? Am I asleep? Wow, that really tripped me out. I'm going to let someone else go first on that one. I'm still coming back to reality. Sammy?
Awesome job on the track. First off, like people in the chat commented, the vocals were amazing, and apparently they were made by your friends. So kudos to her for those. Really great job. I really think this whole tribal vibe. It's very prominent, especially like I'm coming from the psytrance scene, so this would fit very well into like some morning set before it gets dark, hitting into the more heavier sections. And I really like the production and synths and everything in it. But the only note I actually made during this track was that I was disappointed when you had this breakdown and went into the silence. And then after a short break, you just went back to the whole main section that you had been looping on for several minutes. So I felt like that was a huge missed opportunity into like elevating the track and bringing in something totally new, because after the first minute or so, I feel like I have heard the whole track at this point. You don't introduce anything new or different towards the ends of it. So I would basically this feels like a 4-minute long intro to something that you haven't shown us yet. So I'm hoping that you are maybe in the future able to take this somewhere new and somehow keeping the same mood and the vibe, but maybe doing something different with it.
Very cool. Nathaniel?
I think for me, the bass is the next thing to focus on if you're going to evolve this further. Because it's sort of just this boom, 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 boom. You've either got to change up the pattern every so often. I mean, it could be a rolling bass. I think that would fit quite fine in here, especially if you started mixing that in with some more tribal drums, sort of like a... it could get away with that in waves to have it continue to breathe in and out. Or you change up the sound design as you develop it so it gets heavier and darker and sort of oppressive. Like, it really feels like this track wants to make me feel like overwhelmed, but because it kind of keeps the same mood the entire way, it doesn't quite reach that level.
Yeah, yeah. And for me, like I definitely as well, I went to a totally different place with this, but I agree with a lot of people saying that an instrumental section, like a break from the vocals, would have been so cool. And at that point, you can really zoom in and play with that hypnotic space that you're creating, and people can focus on that. And, you know, I would maybe even go to a super minimal point with like breaths and like just really like letting people zoom in on those individual elements and that hypnosis you've created. So yeah, I think that if you're going to be, you said you're going to be adding guitars and more vocals, I think that's cool. I definitely think, again, give the vocals a break at some point, even if you do add different ones, and maybe even just with the guitars, they will create a really interesting texture that you can focus on to replace that vocal element. So maybe you can have a guitar sort of, you know, Polo. And yeah, and Sami is saying, listen to Highlight Tribe Rainbow Serpent for an example on how you can vary rhythm within one track without introducing any new sounds. And that's a good point, because that is definitely like, I'm way more outside of my genre, and I know that it's way more his thing, but that is like when you have this hypnosis, varying the rhythm can be the change up and not break that trance, that literal trance that you get people into. So I think that's going to be super cool when you're done.
I have a reference track as well.
Cool. What is it?
I'd say go listen to something like Massive Attack Angel. That's a really sort of a steady, thumpy bass sound. And it goes throughout most of the track, but again, they manage to keep it fresh in really subtle ways. And it's also got a similar sort of melancholic vocal aspect to it. It doesn't dominate the whole track, but it's really, really fundamental to that track. I think at least, it's not the same intention, but it's a good reference as well, I think, for this sort of how you develop it further kind of thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a really classic, amazing track. People should just listen to that track anyways. For respect. Respect.
Yes, I love that song so much.
All right. Yeah, we just got a couple more, and then Moxfire threw in another one at the end. But we got Musica Master Race is the username, but the SoundCloud account is Coops Techno and House. Okay. Yeah. Thank you so much, Sammy, for joining us. We'll do the last few, just me and Nathaniel. It's so great. Sammy runs the EDM production Reddit, which is a beast of a job. Go take a visit. We'll be doing a lot more events. Hopefully, he'll come back with his excellent feedback. Thank you so much, Sammy, for joining us.
Thank you
Love
very much,
being
Sammy.
here. Thank you, everybody, and have a great night.
Thank you. All right.
Have a wonderful evening.
Have a
You
wonderful
too.
evening. All right. So we're going to listen to Joyous Encounters by Coops. Well, that was very abrupt. Thank you for that. First off, yeah, I really like pretty sounds. A lot of soft sounds, right? A lot of soft, lovely sounds. But when you put all soft sounds together, it can, as Schnitty has commented in the chat, blending over into itself, sounding quite mushy. It can be hard to distinguish between all these sounds because a lot of them are so similar. Like they're very close to kind of sine waves. And, to create really good layers, you need to have some difference in timbre. That's really important because otherwise people can't tell what they're hearing. And some of the beauty and intentional dissonance of the chord voicings that you have are getting a little bit lost in the sauce, so to speak. So I would just focus on creating more separation between your sounds because it's really hard to tell where to focus in this track. Like my attention doesn't know where to go. What do you think, Nathaniel?
I think this wants to be a progressive track. I mean, your intro isn't really an intro, just gets going immediately. We're getting all the main melody, the loop that progresses the entire track and keeps going. It starts there straight away, so we don't really get a chance to appreciate each element as they come in. I think you should go traditional. Start with your either a bass or your beat, or just choose one element to start looping and getting that 4/8/16 bar sort of typical progressive intro and build up into it. The other thing I think that would resolve the mushiness, your melody has a call, dun 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 dun, and then it's got the other bit, the dun 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 bit. There's like the response, the resolution to that, but it's all played by the same instrument, and that means that it doesn't really have the clarity and definition to say we're going from point A to point B, because it all sounds like it's all one phrase. So I think you need to introduce, so like if you're gonna start having the multiple soft instruments, you don't have them all play at the same time. You have them alternate with which voices they take up. So like that organ is really, really buried, but it could easily fill some of that bit and sound really nice. And it's a case as well with something progressive where you just keep changing which one is the dominant one throughout the whole track, but because they're playing the same core motif, it maintains the consistency. The other thing would be, obviously, as you develop it, the drums. I mean, I think it's all about how you filter it, your EQ, and perhaps even how you reverb it. You can create little minute variations even with the same on the dot progression, so that it continues to again flow. Like the overall skeleton, the idea is there.
Yeah, totally. I agree. It just needs some clarity for sure. Okay, so hopefully this is going to be another Google Drive track. So hopefully this will play, but while this is loading, I just wanted to thank everybody who has joined in and given feedback and hung around. This is the most important thing, is the community. Much thanks to Sammy, who took some time out from his busy day. He is also the head moderator of EDM Production subreddit, which is a beast of a job. It's got almost 500,000 subscribers, so super respect for everything that he has to say. And thank you so much for Nathaniel as well. Nathaniel is one of our longest running mods on the EDM partner Discord, and we have been doing this for like 5 years, so it's just super great to be doing events and to having you all here and everything. So if you just joined and you wanted to submit tracks sometime, we will be back at least every week. We're still figuring out the perfect schedule, but just subscribe to ILBC_TV on all socials to find out about our events. We have calendars, we have lots of things going on, and go to our website ilbc.tv. That will tell you a little bit more about the competition that we are building up to. So we've got one more track called Interplay by Moxfire, a new member. So again, the same note, has not been mixed, nothing, blah, 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 needs basically general advice. So this is called Interplay. Okay. Yeah, first off, I just want to apologize so much to Voiceless. I totally didn't mean to skip you. I was just doing something with this sheet and it glitched a little bit. But so we will go back to you before we close. But this is a good start. I definitely think you can change some things up. Obviously, you just said you started this, so this is where it's going. There is a missing space in it for me. You've got this nice, powerful kick that's thumping, but then you don't really have a lot of mid-range stuff. You've got some highs with those bells, and the chords. The chords are a good start, but I think that they're a little bit thin, and that's partially the sound that you're using. Like it's a little bit of a thin sound. It could use some thickening. So I would try everything from saturation to maybe some multiband distortion. And if you've never done multiband processing before, it makes a big difference to stuff like this because you don't want to put like distortion on your chords, right? But maybe just a little bit on the top end, or sorry, not the top end, because you have a lot of top end. On the middle would warm it up a little bit without creating high-end distortion. And that's why it's important sometimes to band separate your effects, because you don't always want the effect on the whole thing. So that will be one thing, warming up, saturating, creating some more thickness in the chords, maybe introducing another element like a mid-range synth that can fill that space. And also with the chords, one of our admins, Admiral Bumblebee, he actually came in and did a really, really cool workshop for my sound design class a while ago. And it was very surprising because one of the things he said, it's so obvious, but it's something you don't always think of. Sometimes you can fix the EQ and you can fix the balance and you can fix the whole sound by just changing the voicing of the chords. So I think that your chords are all voiced very high up, but maybe you can add a couple of notes below, or you can change, maybe take the middle note of the triad and flip it an octave down, things like that. And just basically think of orchestras back in the day. They didn't have EQing and sound design, but the composers would effectively sound design the balance of their compositions by choosing which instruments played when, because each instrument had certain frequency ranges that it would fill in. So I think that just really paying attention to the voicing of your chords and distributing them differently will thicken out the chords themselves. And then once you do that, then I would look at, okay, how much space do I have left now? Can I put in another element? Another thing for me was, I still didn't really know where to focus. I was a little bit confused. My brain was a little distracted. So Natty, what are your thoughts?
I think that the number one priority right now is optimizing the progression, like the actual arrangement of the piece. Pull that hype section forward. We spend way too much time on the build up to the point where I didn't even realize there was going to be a build up to the drop. And it gets all sort of exciting. And I think we need more of that, that changeability to actually keep us on wanting to keep going. Before you even get all through the sound design, I'd take a look at the actual arrangement and where you're going. Like, what is the point of the song?
That is definitely something to keep in mind. What is the point? What do you want people to focus on? So yeah, that definitely a good start. Can go a lot of different places. Just focus on filling in the mids and balancing it out first. Okay, we're down to our last track of the night. Last but not least, saving the best for last, blah, blah, blah. And again, I hope you're all, if you're watching, that you're chilling out, having a great Saturday. I'm just going to sit here and enjoy my onesie with feet. You see, I have feet. And I'm going to spend the rest of my Saturday night being just totally kawaii and sitting here in my pajamas. So thank you for giving me a lovely soundtrack. It's a pleasure on ILBC to be here to help you and to hang out with each other. So we are going to close this with Voiceless Reason, When We Were So Much in Love.
Oh,
right, all right, all right. I gotta be honest, I'm kind of glad I made that mistake because this is a really fun way to go out for the night. Like, I'm in a really good mood now. Really, really nice energy. Thank you. Oh, wow. Sorry. I just realized that my mic has been totally off. All right. So, sorry about that. I mute it sometimes just to make sure you're not hearing me like breathing and typing. So, let me roll back. So happy that I made that mistake because it was a really, really nice note to go out on. Like, this is a really fun track. It makes me smile. It makes me super, super happy. And yeah, I really like it. Now, the big thing, and I'm going to be reiterating the chat because the chat just killed it on the feedback and you said almost everything I was going to say. In your bass, it's a great full sound. It's also not quite sub. You are missing, like if you go one octave down from where you are, that's actually the proper spot for a heavy sub and you're totally missing that. Now, to caution you, I would not necessarily just copy it an octave down and put a sub under that because I think when your bass gets really complicated, like when it gets arpeggiated, you don't want the sub to go. What you want is for your sub to be an accent. So what you can do, what I would do if I were you, is to duplicate some of it to the sub, like when you have your main bass going on where it's just like like simple notes, double that with an octave lower and make sure that you clean up so that you don't have like, maybe you even want to cut off some of the lows of that bass so that you can just have a pure clean sub take over. So it can just be like boom, like an octave lower. I can't go that low with my mouth, sorry. And then thank you. And then if you go into the next part where it goes then I would just have the sub still on the same beats as the simple bass, right? So I would have the sub being like boom, 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 and then your top bass can be going banana, 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 right? So you just need a sub there. Like there has to be a sub. It has to be heavy and it has to be an accent because right now, yeah, you don't have that. And some other great feedback that others have also said, big shouts out, Oki on one said, adding a crunchy old funk break to this would be brilliant. And Barrett said something on similar lines, which is like, you know, it could use a more filled out rhythm section like keys or a guitar. It feels like it was produced using a bunch of loops, so it doesn't have the same impact as the genre it's trying to be. And I think that is important because funk and this kind of style is so much hinging on this live pocket groovy thing. So you can use samples, obviously. Like sometimes what I really like is to use funk guitar like rhythm samples just in the background and use them almost as percussion. So you can actually take a sample and kind of cut out the lows and just be like kind of like and you know, voiceless, they're saying by loops, they don't necessarily mean that it's not like you design it. It means that it doesn't sound like anything is live and grooving. Like it sounds sort of like just very
everything's quantized
and artificial and stuff. And so that is, you know, it doesn't necessarily mean you're using sample loops. It's more like you're using artificial created stuff that's repeating, whereas like a real guitar player would have some variation. So there's some contact libraries that I found that I like. There's samples on Splice, but even just having like a strumming guitar, the funk guitar, they're just going but you know, like or something like that. Even if you don't want to fill, exactly. Even if we should just do a beatbox ASMR feedback session. Even if you don't want to like use the guitar and it's taking up too much space, just even using the top end scratch of the fingers, like so it just goes and it kind of like puts you in the pocket like that. So I think like adding some more live stuff, adding some more funk breaks, and most importantly going that octave down and introducing some sub. And you know, here's the thing, I suspect that maybe your headphones are no, I'm telling you, I'm listening with a sub pack. Your sub is in the wrong octave. Your sub is an octave too high. Okay, so like I hear it and I feel it and it sounds great as an upper bass note. But this is where it gets tricky, and you can have like there's all these discussions with EDM producers and where they fight with real musicians, quote unquote, like instrument players, because they'll say things like you should only produce your track from E to A, and then because this note is too low and this one is too high. But the reality is there is a certain range on a keyboard, and if you go above a certain note, like it just becomes too high to become a sub bass anymore, right? The frequency is just out of that range. And so your entire main pattern is an octave too high. And like I can feel the push in my sub pack, but it feels more like the push you get from a kick because it is an octave too high. So dropping it back down, and if you don't have the greatest headphones, you might not even be able to hear it properly. So this can be a real problem. But as IV is saying, invented is saturation can really help that. So yeah, okay, so we can do a little workshopping before we close out. So Voiceless is saying, here's the problem. The main bass already exists in the 80 to 100 range. So here's what you do. You cut that off and you keep the rest of it, because you have a great top end bass sound. Like it's fat, it's thick, it's satisfying, it hits all the right possibilities. And then so if you have a secondary sub, I mean, I would love, if you're not in our Discord and you want to join our Discord, I would love to sort of like inspect it a little bit more and like hear your sub layer and hear the other layer to know exactly how to help you better. But definitely once we jump off, I'm sure we'd be happy to help you workshop it a little bit. We're all hanging out and chilling in there. But I would. That's such an important part. That and the live feeling. The live feeling, as Barrett was saying, is just so like. And if I'm the same. I don't play guitar as well as I want to, so I end up heavily using sampled loops. So believe me, it's definitely a thing that is a struggle for most people, myself included. Do you have some thoughts, Nathaniel?
My primary thought after everything you've said, because I think that's all important stuff, would be I want to miss the kick and the hat. And it's just constant all the way through the track, to the point where it's feels like it becomes the point of the track, which is a shame because everything else has a really fun vibe. But it's just like boom, boom, kind of thing going on with the kick and the hats, and it just, you need to find points where you can just cut it out, because the rhythm at that point has become so ingrained that it's implied. You don't need it anymore beyond a certain point, apart from where you've gone on for 16 bars of it not being there, and then you reintroduce it to reinforce that implication.
Yeah, missing stuff is great. Like, it's almost like, I feel like in a way, like the crowd and you, it's almost like the fundamentals of courting someone at the beginning of a relationship. Like the crowd comes in and you have to tease them a little bit. You have to make them want more. And as Nathaniel was saying, you have to make them miss something. So one technique that really stayed with me when I made my one and only released house track, which is on a label called Kitsune from France, and it's a collaboration with a producer called Option 4. So if anyone is interested, you can look that up. It was the first time I'd really focused on making minimal kind of house stuff. And at one point we made the coolest little sound in the world and we put it in the track, and then I was like, oh yeah, let's copy it here and here. And he goes, no, it's only got to happen once. And I was like, why? It's so great, it should happen more. He goes, no, we're going to lead people into it, and then they're going to hear it and they're going to go off, and then they are going to just be begging to hear it again for the rest of the song, and we're never going to give it back to them. And so you can almost just think of this as just, you really have to play with this imaginary audience. And like, maybe you've been listening to all these bars and you're like, yeah, great loop, right? But when people are on the floor, they want it to be taken away so that they miss it. Right? So that
you gotta be coy.
Yes, you gotta be coy. So I hope everybody has enjoyed tonight. I know that I'm live on Twitter, Instagram, 2 places on Facebook, and here. And so I would encourage you, if you have been watching for some reason on these other platforms, please go to Twitch. It streams at the best rate, at the best quality, and this is where we are living. We are trying to build up this community so we can do more stuff for you. So thank you so much again. Subscribe to ILBC_TV TV on all socials, including Twitch. Thank you, Nathaniel. It is such a pleasure to have you, and your advice is killer. So
I've been enjoying everyone's tracks this evening, and I will look forward to doing this again.
thank you so much. This is ILBC.TV. Check out our website for the competition. It's been a great night, and good night, everyone. Have a great Saturday or a great Saturday day if you're in somewhere else.